From a rather disappointed fan sending the leads an angry letter, to Hyun having to read some pretty thirsty tweets, here are Outlander's most embarrassing moments from the show, starting with an awkward letter from a fan. Now, anyone who watches the show knows that Sam Heughan and Katrina Balfe, who portray the roles of fan-favorite lovers Jamie and Claire, have enough chemistry to practically light our screens on fire. And it might have something to do with the pair's real-life relationship. Now, hold your horses because it's not what you think. Contrary to popular belief, Sam and Katrina are definitely not dating, but both of them have immense respect for each other, to the point where Hyun has actually gone on record to talk about how lucky he is to have Katrina in his life. I mean, you try spending 10 years working with someone. Either you start absolutely hating them, or you end up developing a natural and easygoing relationship. And thank God the latter is what happened with these two. But as much as Sam and Katrina have clarified that they're just friends who have grown to care a lot about each other and their characters on the show, some fans just can't believe it. In fact, they think that the two are actually lying about not being together. Imagine that. Now, one of these very fans ended up sending fan mail to Sam and Katrina, upset that the two of them weren't together. And while this was definitely a pretty awkward moment for the two leads, Sam claimed that he appreciates how people are so invested in their characters, even if it does lead them to do some pretty crazy things. But Sam isn't the only one who's had to experience embarrassing situations like these. The entire cast has been through it. Sophie Skelton, who plays Brianna Fraser in the show, has had tons of moments where she's out in public, holding entire conversations with people without them ever realizing that she's famous. I mean, come on, folks. She's only part of one of the biggest shows of our time. But that's not even the worst of it. According to Katrina, one time she was out at a supermarket with her friend, who held up a magazine with the actress's face on it and showed it to the cashier. And get this, the cashier absolutely refused to believe it. I can't even imagine how embarrassing that must have been. But that is nothing compared to the time when Sam and Katrina had to film the monkey bite scene. I mean, let's be honest, as grave as the situation was, getting bitten by a monkey is pretty hilarious in the first place. But then having an actual serious conversation about it is even more hilarious. So when Katrina and Sam had to film the scene, it's no surprise that the two kept bursting into laughter as soon as they got to the line about the monkey. In a hysterical behind-the-scenes video, we see the two trying to keep it together as they film the scene. They actually ended up filming that part multiple times because the fits of laughter just wouldn't stop. But if you pay close attention, you'll definitely be able to tell that they were struggling to get it right. And hey, how can I forget about the mule that gave the cast a run for their money? Remember the scene where Roman Baru, who plays Hugo Roche, has to come in riding on a mule? Yeah, that one wasn't as effortless as it looked. In fact, Roman had to spend quite some time trying to get the mule to move to where he wanted. Hey, can you really blame the poor animal? And while the actor struggled, the entire cast was in fits behind the scenes. So as embarrassing as the whole thing was, it sure did make for a pretty memorable moment for everyone on set, even if it meant that Baru had to end up being the butt of the joke. But the mule isn't the only animal that made things interesting on set. Have you heard the story about the farting horses? Now, if you watch Outlander, you'll know just about how many scenes feature a horse or two. It's honestly nothing out of the ordinary for the characters in this world. But what is out of the ordinary is when these horses are going through some serious gastrointestinal problems. I'm sure whoever was in charge of feeding the poor animals that day was running around in panic, because the horses just couldn't stop farting. Imagine the actors ready and waiting for their scenes to be filmed, only for the horses to start ripping one after the next. What's even better is that the entire moment was caught on camera, as Hyun is in the middle of delivering his line when the horse he's on lets out a huge one, making everyone burst out into laughter. But not all embarrassing moments from the show were something to laugh about, and Sam Heughan can definitely testify. Being the lead character, Heughan definitely has a lot on his plate with the portrayal of Jamie Fraser, and sometimes things tend to get a little intense. And that was the case when back in season 1, Heughan's character was captured by Black Jack Randall, played by Tobias Menzies, and had to give in to the cruel British officer's demands to make sure that no harm came to Claire. Of course, this was a pretty uncomfortable scene to watch as Jamie was repeatedly assaulted and tortured, but it was just as uncomfortable for Heughan to film. The reason being that he was still fairly new to the show and was still learning the ropes. And after filming a distressing scene like this one, everyone, he just didn't know who to turn to for support. Thankfully though, throughout the years the cast and crew have learned how to navigate situations like these, all thanks to their deep personal friendships. But honestly, not just that. Intimate scenes in general can get pretty awkward. Now, Outlander is a show with sizzling chemistry, and to accompany that chemistry, the fans need some steaming hot scenes, especially when it comes to Jamie and Claire. But of course, these moments aren't nearly as passionate in real life as they appear on camera, and the actors admit it themselves. And no, it doesn't get better with time. According to Hewen, filming these hot and heavy scenes wasn't always the most natural thing to do, so it's a great thing that he had a good dynamic with Katrina. That made the whole thing a little bit easier. Thankfully though, with the 6th season, Hewen used his executive producer privileges and got intimacy coordinator Vanessa Coffey to help direct these scenes. According to Jamie, having Vanessa help the actors out with their intimate scenes has been super helpful, because not only does she help make those moments a little less awkward, but she also helps them dive deeper into their characters and emphasizes on their physical connection with each other. Sounds pretty cool, right? And speaking of Sam Hewen, this man definitely has his fair share of embarrassing moments on and off set, including the time when author Diana Gabaldon had a lot to say about his trousers. At Comic-Con in 2015, Hewen was put on the spot when a fan asked Gabaldon a question about Sam's trousers in the show being highly distracting, and you just had to look at Sam's face right after that. The poor guy had no idea what was coming, and what happened next made him blush even more. Gabaldon shared her hilarious opinion about how she never wanted to see a close-up of the front of his trousers. And why did she say that? Well, because to her, Hewen is Jamie Fraser after all, and seeing Jamie Fraser in pants rather than a kilt is definitely a jarring sight if I'm being honest. And while Sam and Diana seem to agree on the whole thing, a fan quickly gave the actor a shout-out saying that she wouldn't mind seeing the front of his trousers. And hey, I agree with her, because well, Sam Hewen in a kilt is definitely a sight for sore eyes. Just ask Kelly Clarkson. The actor appeared on The Kelly Clarkson Show back in 2022, where the singer started asking him about his kilts, but she had no idea that Sam had a surprise in store for her. The actor let Kelly know that he had a kilt on just for her, and without warning, he stood up on his chair, doing a little dance for everyone in his kilt. Now, I have to admit that for a moment there, I was scared he was going to flash everyone on TV, but let's just say that Hewen is a man who definitely knows how to handle wearing a kilt, and look pretty great while he's at it. And how can I forget the time when Sam had to go through a bunch of thirsty tweets? If you've watched the show, you'd agree that Jamie's biceps are practically their own character. So I wasn't surprised when a fan tweeted at Hewen telling him that she loves the show, but what she really enjoys is the number of times his biceps make an appearance. The actor is practically stumped about what to say, but that was nothing compared to the one where a fan called Hewen's butt the best there is on TV, even surpassing Kit Harington's Jon Snow, and that's saying something. So, from Hewen having to read some pretty thirsty tweets, to a rather disappointed fan sending the leads an angry letter, these were Outlander's most embarrassing moments from the show.